Hello, class. Want to welcome you to a new section that we're going to be discussing. Now we're moving into part three of class, which is about external competitiveness and determining, appropriate pay levels. We just kind of came out of looking at internal competitiveness and looking, how do we, look at jobs that compare to each other within the organization and things like that. But now we're going to start looking at external competitiveness on the outside. So we start off with chapter 7, which is about defining what that competitiveness looks like. So essentially what we're doing is we're comparing with other employers that hire people with the same skill set. So again, now we're comparing Coke and Pepsi, Walmart and Target. We're trying to figure out, with if another company has a similar type job to our company, how are they paying their employees? Not just in pure number dollars, but also in benefits, in stock options, and all these different things. So how does our organization remain competitive as it relates to our competitors when it comes to compensation? It's kind of what we're looking at for chapter 7. So, and you saw this in our checkpoint number 1 that, we need to set a pay level that is either above, below, or equal to our competitors. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit when we talk about defining what that relevant market looks like. But again, in checkpoint number 1, that was one of the things that we looked at, was taking the jobs that you created and figuring out, okay, do we pay this job above, below, or at market, depending on how our competitors look. And again, there's many factors, as you can imagine, that goes into that. But again, trying to determine the right pay mix relative to our competitors is key. And the way we do that is kind of in two ways. First, we try to control costs and increase revenues. I think that's, kind of business 101, that, controlling costs and increasing revenues is a key. But but how we pay above, below, or at market will help us determine, obviously, if we pay below market, we're controlling our costs that way, but we may have decreased, motivation and decreased, operational, so our revenues may not increase the way we want it to, so we have to look at that appropriate pay mix. Obviously, we need to attract and retain the right employees. Just filling a job, with just anybody on the street, usually doesn't work. We need to have people that actually, want to be there and want to stay there, because again, we often forget about, it's easy to attract employees, but retaining is really the hard part. So as we go over the next couple of chapters, retaining that right talent is going to be a key part in determining our appropriate compensation levels. So, and one thing that we do to look at that is look at a couple of things. Like, for the first thing, your book discusses is about the marginal product of labor. And really, it's kind of a fancy way of saying, okay, if we add one more person, what do we get? So are we going to get more production? So let's say we have a team of 10, that work in one little unit. If we add an 11th person, what is that going to entail? Obviously, it's going to cost us more money, but are we going to get additional output? Or is that person going to be kind of getting in the way of other people and kind of taking away their productivity? So when we talk about the marginal product of labor, what is it going to cost us if we add one more person, into our mix? And that kind of leads to the idea of what we call marginal revenue of labor. So if we add one additional person, are we going to be getting more money, more revenue by adding that person? So, there's the old saying, sometimes you have to spend money to make money. So, that can be kind of true with, this idea of marginal revenue of labor. If we add one more person, is that person going to give us enough value to add to our revenues? You see this a lot, and I tell you one area where you see this a lot is professional sports. So if we bring in this free agent and pay them millions of dollars, is the result on the field going to result in additional revenue for the team, so to speak? So that is something that HR managers, economists spend a lot of time on, is determining, okay, if we add or take away additional labor, what is that going to look like to our bottom line? And not just our bottom line, but our long-term satisfaction of our employees. Employers, I know this may seem kind of, obvious, but employers have to offer higher wages to compensate for, negative characteristics, so to speak. And your book talks about this quite a bit. So I actually saw on the news not that long ago, they were talking about an individual. He gets paid a couple of $100,000 a year, and his whole job is to climb up the top of these massive cell towers and change the light bulbs at the top. That's literally his job. Go up on these big cell towers and big communications towers and literally climb to the very top, unscrew the light bulb, put a new one in, and climb down. And he gets paid a couple of $100,000 every year for that. I mean, that's a lot of money to be able to change a light bulb. But how dangerous a job like this, one tiny slip and you could be dead just like that. So the idea is that with any job, and that's one thing that we have to consider, generally you will see wages higher to compensate for negative characteristics. A lot of corporate lawyers is another good example. Corporate lawyers get paid a lot of money, but they work, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Working nights and weekends and holidays is not uncommon. It's a very stressful environment with lots of competition. So these negative characteristics create this idea that higher wages will compensate for that. We know just because you pay somebody more money doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make them happier, but you see that, and this is going to be important in the next couple of chapters about how higher wages tend to affect individuals' reactions to it. So that leads us into a really kind of important theory about that same idea that I want to make sure we all understand. Your book describes it as efficiency wage theory. So essentially, if we end up paying higher wages, that will actually increase efficiency and lower labor costs. So it almost seems a little contradictory, but again, the whole idea behind efficiency wage theory is that the more higher wages we pay, that will create actually more efficiency with our team, and it will lower the overall labor costs. But a few things have to be present. We have to have high quality applicants. We can't just find some random person on the street and think that will be in. We need quality applicants who have that whole idea of wanting to retain and stay with the organization. So that we have to have lower turnover. So by having those higher quality applicants, you tend to have lower turnover and less job hopping, so to speak. So there needs to be an increased effort. So the idea of, okay, if I'm being paid higher wages, I almost owe my employer additional time and energy and money, so I'm going to give a stronger effort if I get paid a higher wage. That's kind of the prevailing theory. So that there'll be, your book calls it skirking behavior, but kind of, not shenanigans, that somebody's not going to come in and close their door and read a book for 8 hours. They're going to be motivated to do the work. So, and there's a small discussion about, okay, the need to supervise. So, some people enjoy supervising people, some people don't enjoy supervising people. It kind of depends on your own personal views, but generally with higher wages, there is kind of an expectation you may have to supervise people, but the fewer number that you have to supervise, it's going to kind of increase overall happiness. So if all those things are present, we have what we call efficiency wage theory, and we're using our money to the best of our ability. Well, the final thing that I want to talk about chapter 7 is about defining the relevant market. And this goes back to what we were talking about here just a few minutes ago, and what we looked on specifically in checkpoint number 1 is, do we pay at, above, or below market? And again, there's so many factors that determine it. And the vast majority of you did a really good job of explaining in your checkpoint number 1 what that looks like and why you selected why you did. A pay with competition, also called matching, kind of hitting the market, kind of the midpoint, equal to. Yeah, you're not above or below your competitor. You're kind of in the middle, so you don't get noticed, so to speak, for being on one at the end of the other. But you kind of, it's okay. Well, I can make $10 here an hour. I can make $10 there. You don't really stand out. It doesn't really sell your organization. Again, it could be the most efficient way to get the maximum out of your employees, but and most companies tend to have what we call a match or pay with competition. But again, it can be kind of dull. It can be, it can kind of make employees, kind of lax and more just, okay, I'm just kind of going with the flow. So you have to consider that. So the way you would compensate for that is you have a lead paid policy where you're paying above market. And obviously, who doesn't want to work for a company that pays top dollars? I mean, we all do. We would take that in a heartbeat. So, But again, the downside of that is obviously, well, you can probably hire fewer people. More is going to be expected of you. You're going to have more stress. There's going to be less money that, or more money that's spent on salaries. Less money is going into manufacturing or marketing or whatever else. So it's a pull and take. So yeah, you might be paying a great wage, but are you getting the support? If they're giving you a lot of money, can they offer less benefits, for example? So that's something that you have to consider with a lead policy. And with a lag policy, you would think, wow, that's a terrible idea. Why would we be at the very bottom of paying? So, and again, there is some truth to that. So, but you see lag policies like in tech, like startups, where you pay somebody a less wage, but you offer them stock options if the company really takes off. I work in higher ed. Higher ed's a great, example of kind of a lag policy. Most, not all, but most higher ed institutions pay wages less than you could make in private industry. So, but the flip side is most higher ed organizations have phenomenal healthcare benefits, phenomenal retirement benefits, tons of time off, 2 weeks off at Christmas, all these great vacations that you wouldn't get in private industry. So yeah, you might be willing to take a little bit less money, but you have all these extra benefits that you get for making less money. So again, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Your book definitely emphasizes that. But again, as we get further along, we need to decide, how do we define this relevant market? Are we matching? Are we leading? Are we lagging behind? And the pros and cons. So make sure that you understand the pros and cons of each one of those. So, well, I think that's it for chapter 7. Again, we're going to be having the next several chapters about the external competitiveness and about determining appropriate pay levels. So thank you again for your attention. And if you have any questions, please let me know.